Just before I left the White House, the president sent me on a mission to visit the Soviet Union. We were locked into a very, very difficult situation with the Soviets. The president had been there in 1972 in the spring, had set up a strategic arms agreement and a grain deal. That was the deal. We would send them grain and they would limit the development of nuclear weapons. So very, very important. But this had run a cropper in the Congress because the Congress was angry, members of Congress were angry that the Soviets were not letting out Jews who wanted to emigrate out of the Soviet Union. They were keeping them all in. And so there was an amendment to the bill in Congress that would have allowed us to start shipping grain to the Soviet Union to block that grain until they would release Soviet Jews. I went to Moscow right when this issue was boiling. Very few Americans had been there because we just opened up relationships. I ended up in the Kremlin one afternoon negotiating with Vasily Kuznetsov, who was the hardline Soviet negotiator. The question was, could I get Jews released so that the amendment in Congress wouldn't block the shipping of grain and therefore wouldn't block the arms agreement that Nixon had entered into, which was historic and extremely important to the national security. And we sat at one of those long tables with all the Americans on one side and all the Soviets on the other side, and went for about 2 hours. This guy was really tough, and he kept saying to me, pound the table, he'd say, "Mr. Colson, you come here and you're trying to interfere with our domestic affairs." And I kept countering him. I kept saying, no, human rights aren't domestic affairs. You don't give human rights to people in the government, and you can't take them away. Human rights are God-given. I remember quoting the language of the Declaration of Independence. And I'm reading this to him, and he's getting angry and angrier and angrier. And I learned ahead of time that what you do with them is just keep pressing and don't show any sign of weakness. And so I just kept getting tougher and tougher. I said, we're not interfering in your domestic affairs. We're talking about human rights. And after about 2 hours, you could see everybody was getting tense, and he was beginning to weaken. I saw a sign of it, and all of a sudden he hit the table. He said, "Okay, Mr. Colson, you can tell your president we'll do our part." And as a result of that, within days thereafter, they released 35,000 Soviet Jews. But what I learned out of that was that the unique contribution that America makes to the world, and it is unique, is to promote the idea that people are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. This is the fundamental ethic on which the Western civilization was built.